Thank you. Great. So, do I have your verbal release to take a photo of you so that I can post it on my social media later tonight or tomorrow? Please say yes.
Yes.
There are a couple attorneys in the room, so you've heard that affirmation, yes? If I need to call on you, I can? Okay. Smile for the Catherine, where are you going? I want you in the shot. Okay, she's out. A millennial who doesn't want her picture taken. Okay. All right. This is awesome. Thank you for inviting me to come and talk about my latest book. I'm going to give you the highlights of the book. Hopefully you'll be motivated to read it. But if you're not, 70% of the books that are purchased off of Amazon are never fully read. So if you want to be an author someday, take the pressure off of yourself. 70% of people aren't going to read your book anyway, so don't stress about what it says, okay? It was very liberating when I found that out when I wrote my first book. I was like, well, hell then, okay, right? How many books do you have in your office or home that you haven't fully read, right? Anybody other than me? One or two? So the stats we verified, right? Great. You have in front of you the full book. Thank you for purchasing my book. That's awesome. Makes the author very happy. And I gave you the big ideas on a sheet of paper. So in the black and white 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, the big ideas of what we're going to talk about today with kind of lines on the back. Should anything I say you want to take a note, there's one place to write your notes. If you do that, if you don't, I'm okay with that as well. My hope from today is, one, you might take back the messages of killing cats leads to rats to the workplace. I'd like you to at least start having a conversation about what are the potential unintended consequences of this decision. Let's at least think about it before we act. And I'd like you to share the fact that unintended consequences happen everywhere. They're okay if we're looking for them, and we take a positive attitude. Companies that have a positive attitude towards problem solving have a 20% greater capacity to solve problems. So as the leaders of your organizations, smile through the pain and let people know it's okay to tell you something's not what you expected. Let's just work on solving the problem. Because the longer you wait, the harder they become. So when we released the book in March, it immediately became a hot new release for Amazon, which was cool. And we were #1 in 2 categories, workplace culture and workplace behavior. Those categories are important to me because I believe the #1 competitive advantage that medium-sized companies have against their bigger competitors. Does anybody not have a competitor that is larger than they are? Is anybody the largest in their space? Okay. We tend to think the bigger companies have it all better, right? It's just easier, bigger scale, all the resources. Oh my God, if I was just twice the size, or if I was 10 times, or whatever, life would be better. No. 68% of the American population self-testifies through the Gallup Q12 survey that they are not engaged at work. 68% of the American workforce says, I don't really want to be here. And a percentage of them say, I hate being here. I'm actively disengaged in this freaking place, but I'm stuck here right now. So there's a minority of people that are engaged at work. I tend to believe they work for smaller companies. It is your competitive opportunity to have an engaged workforce. It's the hardest thing for a company to copy. We can copy your logo. I can steal Glenn's website. He showed me some cool stuff today. I'm thinking about copying it. You know, before he knows it, I'll have nothing. What can he do? But when your competitor says, man, those people are on fire, I want that in my workplace, that's not so easy. So putting the book in workplace behavior and workplace culture is important to me because I believe your employees expect you to be clairvoyant. That if you say, if we do these 3 steps, we're going to get this great outcome. And they believe you, and they do those 3 steps with great vigor and vim and work overtime, and the outcome is different, they go, what the hell? Didn't Rick know that by doing this we got that? And if that outcome ever hurts me as your employee, wow, I'm not going to be happy, right, with you, Rick? And if it happens consistently over time, what do the employees start to think? What? Right. And what's the likelihood that they're going to be fully engaged to take the next strategic action that you tell them to take when they think you don't know what the hell you're talking about? Don't let that happen. That's a big company problem. That is not an entrepreneurial-led company. That is not a middle-market company. That is not a fast-growing company. We're better than that, ladies and gentlemen. And I want to give you just one set of things to help you to avoid one of the things that can lead to disengagement in the workforce, which is unintended consequences. In 2003, the California Coastal Records Commission had the task of taking pictures of the California coastline because it erodes and it changes and we want to see it. They took 12,000 photos. This is one of them. It happens to be the house of Barbara Streisand, right? When Miss Streisand found out that the California Coastal Records Commission had a picture of her house, she sued them for $50 million, saying this is an invasion of her privacy. Before she filed the lawsuit, very few people even know that this picture existed, and even fewer looked at it. After the publicity of Miss Streisand filing this lawsuit happened, 1 million people wanted to see that photo, right? The first order on unintended consequence for Ms. Streisand was that her case was thrown out. The second order, she was compelled to pay $155,000 to the attorney and to the photographer. But the next order on unintended consequence is one that's more lasting. Don't do it now, but make a mental note, maybe write it down. Google the Streisand effect, because her name is now forever linked with the idea of frivolous lawsuits because of this lawsuit that she filed. Lawyers in the room, can I get an amen? Thank you. My BHAG is to have a lasting positive impact on the lives of clients that I work with, and my goal is to impact 1 million people with these kind of talks, the books, the radio show, and the rest of the stuff that I do. I lead CEO peer groups for middle market companies in Southern California and Orange County. I believe it is the greatest place for people to come together and share. It's lonely at the top, ladies and gentlemen, and sometimes there's nobody else that understands what you're going through, the people who've been through it before with you. It's a great place for sharing and learning. In the I'm sorry?
Amen.
Yeah, amen. We're having a revival meeting here today, baby. This is a deep south, and I'm good. I'm all about it. I was born in Pittsburgh, but I love the Baptist church. That's my favorite place to go. If I had to go. And I did have to go. So in the mid-2000s, the global automotive industry was freaking out about having to meet the now more stringent EPA regulations on emissions. They had always matched power with fuel economy and some level of emissions, but these new regulations from the EPA were really tough. And the executives in Germany were really worried about one specific power plant engine that they had. They had a 2.0-liter diesel engine that was in not only a lot of Volkswagen cars, but it was also in Audis and in Porsche vehicles. This was a popular engine for them. And what did they realize eventually? It was too dirty to meet EPA regulations. So in typical German ingenuity, don't be an insult Germans, they decided they could write a software program that would, when the car was being tested, give information about the EPA, about the emissions that were slightly more positive than the actual on-road performance of the car. It worked so well that in 2009, the Jetta TDI with that engine in it won the Green Car of the Year. Right? I'm sure in Germany they're going, holy cow, that's too good, boys. Back it off a little bit. Tone that thing down, dudes. You did it too well. The unintended consequence of their desire to sell a car that had an engine that didn't meet the EPA regulations is the EPA found out. 6 executives were indicted. The CEO of Volkswagen was forced to resign. They had 11 million cars around the world that had that one engine in it. It cost them over $10 million to figure out how to fix the problem, recall the cars, pay the fines. The next order of unintended consequence is that the German economy wobbled because Volkswagen is a huge economic engine, pardon the pun, for the German economy. And when countries around the world started questioning the ethics of the German Volkswagen manufacturer, it caused problems for Angela Merkel and the country at large. Unintended consequences go far beyond your company, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a major player. Memes started to show up, poking fun at Volkswagen's desire to cheat the
that's good one. I like that.
Yeah! It wouldn't play well in Boston, but it works just fine here on the West Coast. I'd like to introduce you to Robert K. Merton, a storied man who was a professor at Columbia University. He is the father, ladies and gentlemen, of modern sociology. He created terms like role model, reference group. He actually did a research paper in 1936 studying large-scale social systems, where he realized and recognized that major decisions implemented in large-scale societies have unanticipated consequences. Over time, that's 1936, so he created this concept of unintended consequences. Over time, we've changed the term unanticipated, which is what he wrote, to unintended consequences. This is the law of unintended consequences. It holds that almost all human actions have at least one unintended consequence. Recognize anytime you ask people to take what Merton said, purposeful action to get a goal, to accomplish something, something could happen. You could not intend it to happen, but it might. And it's nice to try to figure out what those possibilities are beforehand, so you have a chance to avoid, reduce, or mitigate them. There were 3 types of unintended consequences Dr. Merton's research revealed. One, he called a negative effect. It sucks. It's worse than what you thought. It's bad on the surface. You just didn't expect it. Everybody looks at it and goes, yuck. The second one, and we'll show you an example of that in a little bit, is more subtle. It sows the seeds for future problems. So on the surface, you think, hey, that decision went well. We like the consequences. And then later, the hammer comes down, and you go, oh, you know what? If we don't realize that really could be traced back to something that happened a while ago. Sows the seeds for future negative effects. The third one is a positive effect. Hey, it's better. Whoa, who doesn't like an unintended consequence that's better than what you had anticipated? Show me, who would want that not to happen? That's all. Right, I tricked you. Ha ha, unintended consequence, that's the question. Okay. I'm going to tell you though, in our research for this book, we recognized that unfortunately, like everything for a business leader, it's usually a problem for him, even the good things. Let me give you an example. Let's say Glenn and I make a company, have a company, and we make these little clickers. And we're come out with a new one. And we think this new clicker is going to sell 1,000 units a month. So we get the team, we get the supply chain, right? We build advanced inventory, we put them out into the distributors and the resellers, and lo and behold, we start selling it, and it's selling 1,500 units a month. We're high-fiving each other, right? We're in the panel boardroom or wherever you and your executives go to celebrate success. That's when it would be good to walk the 4 corners of your business. Because, for instance, maybe it's Saturday morning, and Martha is working, making those extra 500 units. And she's getting paid overtime, maybe, that's good. She's going, hey, why didn't Glenn or Rick know that this thing was going to be so popular and have us build them during normal hours? I wouldn't have to be here on Saturday morning. I'm missing little Johnny's soccer game. And oh, by the way, when I came in, I didn't see Glenn's Tesla in the parking lot. So even good news, serendipity, positive effects, can be negative for you as the leader. Can begin to sow the seeds of doubt about your ability to be clairvoyant, predict the future outcomes of what you get paid to do, which is make strategic. I'm not talking about minor decisions. I'm talking about those strategic decisions. We all have them, right? You look back over the course of the year, you probably go, man, there were 5 or 10 decisions. Thank goodness we made them right. Or, we didn't make them all right, right? Those are the decisions that I'm talking to you about. Okay, so how am I doing so far?
Good.
Does anybody want to? Can I hear you, brother? Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Since the 1800s, this is a storied company, right? I know I'm in the heart of Wells Fargo territory here, so I'll be careful. But I'll tell you, I'm a customer. Okay. In 2015, they were rated by one of the services as one of the most, as the most valuable brand in banking. They were credited for not making the kind of risky decisions that other banks made that kind of precipitated the Great Recession. They were conservative. They were heralded. In 2016, all that changed. Because it became known that in the retail banking division, are there any retail bankers at Wells Fargo? I don't want to insult anybody here. Check me on the truth. Our research suggests that in the retail banking division, they had a goal of selling 8 different products to every customer. Then CEO John Stump put in an annual report, 8 is great. And it makes perfect sense in retail banking because the most expensive part of the relationship is the customer acquisition. Once Rick is our customer, let's sell him a credit card and a checking account and whatever else he needs, because that's all margin, baby. Let's just margin it up. They were the king of cross-sale in banking. They were known for this. The Wall Street Journal wrote that that mantra of 8 or great created a high-pressure sales culture in the retail banking division, where employees were regularly berated, demoted, and occasionally fired for consistently not making that goal. The unintended consequence of that is those employees that were left created fraud. They opened up almost 2 million fake accounts without the client's knowledge or approval. CEO Stump was called to Washington, D.C. to testify, and I don't know about you, but he did not look like he wants to be there. And neither do these yaks behind him want to be there that day, right? Look at them, not a one of them. You take a picture, sometimes people don't look the right. But when you take a picture and everybody looks that way, they're looking that way, ladies and gentlemen, for the whole time, right? Shortly after this, CEO Stump decided it was time for him to retire Zine from Wells Fargo, leaving $40+ million in unvested options. Kerry Tolstad, who was previously the head of the banking division, retail banking division, decided it was time for her to find greener pastures somewhere else, leaving $14 million. That was the first order kind of unintended consequence. But now the elected officials, the media, and maybe worse for them, the regulators started going, if you had those kind of business practices in one area, let's look a little closer at Wells Fargo. And you might have heard that earlier this year, do you want to finish the sentence for me? They got hit with $1 billion fine for business practices associated with car loans and mortgages. It's the biggest fine ever levied against the bank. They're still dealing with the ramifications of what happened in that division. The unintended consequence is the government's put clamps on them and won't let them get any bigger until they prove they can be trusted against. Dr. Merton said the most obvious limitation to the correct anticipation of consequence of action is provided by the existing state of knowledge. In other words, hey, I call it your decision ecosystem. When you read the book, you'll see the graph on there. It's that environment around every executive that helps you to make decisions. It's the blogs, the radio shows, the books that you might read, like Killing Cats Leads to Rats. It's the peer groups that you're in, or the consultants that you use. The more robust that ecosystem is, the more they challenge your thinking before you implement it. So the more likely you are to have thought through things that maybe wouldn't come to you on your own. There are 5 conditions that Dr. Merton found that large-scale social systems, conditions that can create unintended consequences. May I quickly step through those 5 and try to relate it to business? May I?
Yes.
This is called an answer, baby.
Yes.
If I had to sit there for an hour or 30 minutes listening to me, I might be a little bit tired after having 2 glasses of wine and a little bit of food and a long business day. I'm trying here, ladies and gentlemen. Ignorance. Ignorance is the first one Dr. Merton identified. Ignorance in business comes when we don't collect any information, or we have our people collect the information and we go, nah, I got this, right? I'm overconfident because I've seen this before. This was 3 years ago. Glenn and I faced this same problem. We made that decision, and time and technology has not changed much in 3 years. We ought to do the same damn thing, Glenn. It's just easier. It'll get the same outcome. That's ignorance. Taking the time to get some information and data helps to avoid, reduce, and mitigate unintended consequences. Make sense? In business. Okay. Error. Error builds on ignorance because maybe Glenn and I had a report commission. But maybe there are some mistakes in the report and we don't catch it. You know, a couple figures in the spreadsheet are not quite right, but we don't notice it, and we make a decision on some bad data. Or, and we've seen this in our research, more for larger companies, good news, larger companies, people that give the data intentionally give you misinformation. Because they know if they give the right data, it might negatively affect them. I've got my fight for them. I don't need you to be messing in it. So if you're asking me for a set of information, I'm going to give you a set of information. Glenn, you worked for a big company for a while. Did you ever notice that people...
What color rock would you like to see?
Yeah. Okay, that's error. This one is immediate interest. In business, we see this coming when public companies are really focused on one thing. What is that? Their stock price. Their quarterly performance and their stock price. And so for those of us that work for privately held companies, we go, woohoo, this is not our problem. Now this is a picture of a salesperson. Because many of us can assume that those salespeople are only considering their own selfish goals. But what we see in smaller businesses and privately held companies, and it can happen to big companies as well, is you get overly fixated on one area of the problem to the exclusion of the bigger picture. You get a boss, or you're so focused on this one area, maybe it's a disgruntled customer, or maybe it's a competitor, that you don't think about the rest of the picture. Does that make sense? Okay. In 2016, the battle between Apple and Samsung for the cell phone business was like, it's the coolest battle in consumer electronics for most of us, because we benefit. Faster processors, higher resolution, new technology, longer battery life. Reports suggest that the executives of Samsung in Korea pushed their phone division to ensure that their large format phone would be out before Apple's phone. And so to much fanfare, in August of 2016, they launched the Galaxy Note 7. Woohoo! Hallelujah! Right? A month before Apple could come out with their large format phone. But in that time, early users reported, hey, this freaking thing, it runs hot. No, I mean, like really hot. Something's not right here. So Samsung called back those early units and set up updated units, only to find out now the reports of the phone being hot is now starting to have reports that some of the phones caught fire. And when people like Nathan on social media post a picture of their car who says, my car caught on fire because my Galaxy Note 7 exploded, Samsung had a huge problem on their hands, right? To make matters worse, the FAA said, hey, you don't get on this plane if you have a Note 7. You don't get on this plane if you shut it off and put it in your briefcase or your purse. You don't get on this plane if you shut it off, you put it in your bags, and you put it in the hull of the plane, because we can have a catastrophic problem in the air. Go home and take your stinking phone with you. That's not good for the brand. Not good for the brand. Surprisingly, they recovered so well. I don't understand it. Nonetheless, when we were writing the book, we were kind of in the throes of this, and so you're going to read a little bit of that in the book. The bottom line is, they stopped selling it by the end of the calendar year. They recalled 2.5 million Note 7s that were out. They hired 700 researchers because they had to figure out what the heck went wrong with that phone. They tested tens of thousands of phones and batteries. It cost them over $5 billion to do the research, to figure out that it was probably with the battery and the wiring and blah, blah, blah. That was the unintended consequence. The second order unintended consequence, if I may, is they have a sister division, Samsung, who makes batteries. All kinds of batteries, big batteries, little batteries. Some of the batteries that were in the Note 7. The quarter after they stopped selling the Galaxy Note 7, that division saw a 20% reduction in their sales. Because customers were going, hey, you know, we're going to wait, Rick. Love you, love your batteries, not worth it. Basic values are the next area that Dr. Merton's research found that large-scale social systems can cause unintended consequences. And we say, well, how does this apply to business? Basic values. Well, sacred cows, blind spots, can create a vision problem. You're not even allowed to see it. You don't even see it. Potential problems of your decisions. Or groupthink. We all want consensus, right? We hire people for cultural fit. We want people to think like us. We want people to take action. Act like I would if I wasn't there, so I don't have to be there, right? The problem with that is sometimes people stop telling you what they really think, fearing that you won't want to hear it, because you're not a team player. Be careful. The biggest time we saw this as a problem is when you have channel partners, and you don't understand your partner's motivation, and you make a strategic decision to roll something out, and the partner says, no, thank you. I'm not going to do that. This isn't a business example, but it might be one that could be instructional for you. In 2009, the Washington, D.C. City Council was having a problem in Ward 6. If you've been to D.C., Ward 6 is that area around the Capitol and all the cool stuff that you want to go see, the museums. The problem was people were coming in, buying single cans of beer, going out, causing disturbances that the police would have to come and manage. And occasionally they'd have to do this. And this is very unpleasant, right? Nobody likes this. And so the city council passed an ordinance. They said, you know what? We're going to solve this problem, Glenn. We're going to stop the sale of single cans of beer. If you can't buy the beer, you can't drink it, you can't disturb the public, and you probably won't pee in public. Because you don't have to pee as much, because you don't know after you drink a few beers, what? You got to go to the restroom, right? They didn't understand the importance of those single cans of beer to the liquor stores. That was a high margin, cash-based sale for them. So the liquor stores banded together and said, you know what? Let's sell a 2-pack. There's no ordinance against selling 2 cans of beer. Yeah, right? In hindsight, what the hell were they thinking about, right? So, calls the police, more. Did nothing to stop the urination. Created people hang. Glenn and I would go together so he could buy one beer and I could buy the other. We didn't have enough for 2 cans. One each would work, right? The final one is self-defeating prophecy. And this happens in business when the executives aren't comfortable or confident in the decision that they make. So when they roll out the strategy, they're really not behind it. And that leads to a lot of unanswered questions. Or they think a bunch of unrelated things need to be dealt with to deliver the strategy. And they have nothing to do with it. Now the rank and file may know this has nothing to do with that, but they're telling me I gotta paint it white anyway, so I'm painting it white. It's gonna have no difference on the outcome, but that's what the boss said. Again, not a business case, but one that I think points out self-defeating prophecy. The Black Plague that hit the European continent in the 1300s is one of the worst pandemics in human history. 75 million people, maybe 200 million died during those 1300s. Researchers believe it started really in Asia because there were fleas that were on the backs of rats that were on the vessels and the merchant ships that came along what was called the Silk Road and came into Europe. And that might have been the cause of the plague. But that's not the unintended consequence. In 1200s, Pope Gregory IX was the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. He's the first person that historians can find who put in writing what's called a Vox in Rama, that the black cat was the vessel, his words, vessel of Satan on earth. Now what religious person would want Satan in their cottage? It was immediate death warrant for black cats because nobody wanted them around. They were evil. Does anybody know anybody today who when they see a black cat cross the street won't cross its path? Does anybody know anybody anymore who does that? Some, right? That thing, that was 1200s. Hundreds of years ago, still in the minds of some people, that bias allowed people in the 1300s to say, cats, dogs, kill them. They're living with us, they're probably causing this curse. 1600s, in London, the Great Plague of London, the mayor of London, on advice of his physicians, hired tens of thousands of people to kill dogs and cats, fearing that in the 1600s, they were still the cause of the Great Plague of London. Your employees think you need to be clairvoyant and make that point. I've talked about the three types and the 5 causes. In the time that I have left, how am I doing? Am I okay? Because I know this group pushes. I don't want to bore you. I want to keep you interested. The room's a little warm to me. I don't know how it is to you, but a little warm to me. Can I go through the 6-step secure model with you quickly? To give you, because I would feel bad if I left you here just with the problem and not a possible solution. That's not what we consultants do. Well, we give you the solutions a little bit of time. Saves you reading the book. That's right. All right. In the next few minutes, we're going to save you the hours it would take to read the book.
It's a good book. Do read it.
But read it. And then write a review. Is that too much of an ask? Okay. The first one is to slow down the decision process. This one, I know is difficult. The drumbeat of business is ever, right? It's not slowing down, it's going faster. I don't care what industry you're in. And the bigger you get, the faster it is, the more things you have to decide. Here's what I mean. There was an article in Harvard Business Review that looked at 187 CEOs of middle market companies. And they found that on average, those wonderful leaders spent less than 3 hours a month thinking about the strategic vision of their company. I can tell you in a middle market company, if you as the boss are not thinking about the long-term strategy of your company, nobody else is. That's your job, boss, right?
And what happens by doing that is you stop working on the important, you start working on the urgent, right? And what happens there is you start making emotion-based decisions because everything's coming at you at such a rate of speed that you have to make decisions. Nobel Prize winning Daniel Kahneman wrote a book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And he looked at decisions that business people make. And what he found is you have two brain systems. You have a fast system and a slow system. The slow system is deliberate, fact-based, and we use it occasionally. But we're lazy, in his word, not mine. And we like to use the fast one. We trust our gut. We trust our instincts. We trust our emotions, because that's what's driven by the fast thinking. It's tied to very strong history and emotions. So, large companies can fall prey to this. In the 1980s, I don't have time to show you the video, but does anybody remember the commercials of the Pepsi Challenge? Where they would blind taste test, oh, you know, Pepsi! Pepsi's better than Coke! This is great! And Coca-Cola had seen their sales decline over years, but this was like the final straw. They were being painted as a product for a bygone era. Your mom and dad like Coke. The Pepsi generation, we're young and cool. The 70s, 80s, let's party. They were freaking out because they felt their future wasn't bright. So, around the same time, they happened to have a formulation rolling around corporate headquarters for Coca-Cola of a slightly different taste. And so they did their own blind taste test, but they didn't make it public. They didn't do a commercial. They just kept a couple 100,000 people. You're like, this one, that one. Give you 3. Try 3. And the researchers would come back and say, boss, Glenn, they like the new formulation better. They like it a lot better than Pepsi. And oh, by the way, they like it better than our classic Coke taste too, boss. So they made the decision to launch, in 1985, New Coke. Does anybody remember New Coke?
Yeah.
This thing lasted on the shelves less than 5 months. Because people went, no, you cannot take away from me what I like and know by classic flavor. Some people think this was like marketing genius by Coke. That they created this sense of scarcity by taking away what people love. We've done our own research, read stuff that Robert Goizetta says, who was the CEO at the time. Believe me, in my opinion, this was an unintended consequence that had a positive outcome because they were willing to quickly redo the decision. Not every company, in the face of the facts, will change their mind. Can you think of a time where a company had the data, they knew they needed to do something different, they refused to do it for whatever reason? This was a high-profile oops by Coke. Do we agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, expand your knowledge. This is 2 ways. 1, assess the information that's inside your company. It's amazing to me, and our research shows, that if you just ask the people who actually are going to have to do the work, what you might learn before you make the decision. It really, in more academic terms, it's really a good strategy to blend the people who are creating the strategy with those people who are charged to implement it. Frankly, just ask people, what do you think? Is this a good idea? Does this make sense to you? Tell me the truth. What? You like this? No. I mean, you can't bring everybody into every decision, but the strategic ones don't make it in the ivory tower. The other part of it is to access information that's outside your building. You'd be amazed how much people know that you don't know, and how similar what you're dealing with are what other people are dealing with. Hey, I'm biased. I think you can get a lot of that in a peer group, and what Glenn does and what I do, but you can get it in other ways. Hire a consultant who's done this successfully for other people and can help you. In 2015, Walmart was sick and tired, Doug McMillon, the CEO, of getting written up in every article about not paying a living wage. You remember that term? A living wage, right? They had this whole group of employees, these new hires, 500,000 of them, who were kind of disgruntled because they had to have a second job. Like, working at Walmart didn't pay the bills, so they had to do something else. So in their benevolence, Walmart said, we're going to raise the pay of our minimum wage employees to $10 an hour. This is going to make them happy. It's going to get the media off our backs. Life's good. They rolled it out, 500,000 people. Much to their surprise, the rest of the workforce were not as happy. They had 1,000,003 employees. And those people that had been with them up to 10 years were making $12 an hour. And they're going, what the hell? You just hired this guy at 10 and I'm making 12? This is not right, Walmart. Organizations like the Economic Policy Institute says, whenever best practice is, if you're going to raise the pay of your lowest paid cohort, the people right above them, move them up a little bit too, because you don't want them to overlap. These people get upset. You would think Walmart, with all their money and power, would have found the Economic Policy Institute and asked them a couple questions about their strategy. I don't know. I wasn't in the room. The third one, clarify your desired outcome. What do I mean by this? Make sure you tell your people why you're doing it and what you expect them to do. Be clear, explaining good behavior from not good behavior. Quickly, this one comes to me from Burger King. The executives and the regional managers, anybody in the fast food space, they were trying to figure out, how do we make sure the customer experience through the drive-thru is the same as when you walk in? Hey, we use technology. They put a sensor where you drive up, yes, I would like my Whopper. They put another sensor where you paid your money, you got your Whopper, and you drove off, and a timer would blink. 3 minutes was to go. They instituted this technology in some of their stores. And the regional people were like, whoa, this is awesome. We're meeting our 3-minute goal even during the peak times of the day. During breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we're still nailing it. We're great. Well, what they didn't know is you would order your Burger King burger. You would go up and you would pay for your Whopper. And the kid would say, hey, Rick, it ain't ready yet. Drive around, park in the parking lot, we'll find you, we'll bring you your Whopper when it's done. So even though they thought at corporate they were doing the 3 minutes, you were waiting in the parking lot. There are now defined areas in parking lots where you go and wait for your food, because we just can't do it in 3 minutes. Is this making sense? Am I okay?
Yeah.
We good?
Yeah.
All right. Unify the team, baby. Brainstorm. Collaborate with the next 2 generations that have shoved their way into the workforce, thank goodness. You've got to be collaborative. You got to just ask opinions, how to get their advice. Let them talk about the future with you. Delegate effectively. In the book, there are 6 levels of delegation. If you do nothing else, I think it's page 75, read those 6 steps of delegation. I find it's hard sometimes for bosses to delegate. They get nervous, the employee gets nervous, you don't fully tell them what they want, they're afraid to ask you questions feeling like you might not think they want to do it, and all of a sudden, you give them a thing and they go, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But I know it's due on Friday. So if you just read through those 6 levels of delegation, maybe you'll become more confident. Many people who've read the book have said that's been very helpful. That's the price of admission. Okay. The last one is never micromanage. If you want to kill the enthusiasm and engagement of your employees, micromanage them. In the